I want to start with a provocative question. In Illinois, did you know that there's a nuclear reaction powering your house? As I will explain, there is, but it's probably not the nuclear reaction we want powering our society. For the past 3 months, our society has gone through an unprecedented disturbance like never before. We have been in our homes for more than 3 months, not being able to be together, not traveling as much as before, and ultimately using much less energy. The pandemic has made our jobs, education, and social life much more difficult. It's a virus to us, but a sense of hope for the earth. A recent Chicago Tribune article discussed how nature is reviving itself again, through animals returning to Lake Michigan shorelines and signs of nature responding positively. So the question is, how do we benefit from this crisis? It all starts from the electricity powering the device you're listening to this speech on. COVID-19 has caused a dramatic decrease in the amount of energy use and thus CO2 emissions, as stated by the World Economic Forum. We should increase our investments into solar energy as it will make that decrease permanent. A house in Waukegan provides an example for how it can work. Let's look at image 1, which shows the energy mix in Illinois. This graph comes from a company called Sun, which installs solar panels. There are currently 2 dominating energy sources in Illinois as of 2017, nuclear being 53% and coal being 32%. The U.S. Department of Energy states that Illinois uses 143.5 terawatt hours of electricity every year. Waukegan is one of the top 10 biggest cities in Illinois, so we should be a leader in using cleaner energy. What kind of cleaner energy? Solar energy. Our primary source of electricity has been through nuclear power plants, which has been very reliable and consistent. However, the costs to build and maintain these plants are just too high. A good example are 2 nuclear power plants in the Clinton and Quad cities shutting down in 2017 due to these costs. On top of that, even with all the security measures taken, there can still be accidents when operating in these facilities, which can then lead to nuclear disasters like a waste leakage or radiation poisoning. Accompanying nuclear power plants are fossil fuel power plants. Nationally, more than 60% of our energy comes from fossil fuels, according to the University of Arkansas and the U.S. Energy Information Administration, or EIA for short. We still use it because it packs a punch. Coal, for example, is a condensed form of fuel that's been reliable since the Industrial Revolution. But it contributes to many issues in both our environment and society today. The computer you're using uses energy from fossil fuels, thus contributing to global warming. One example from the Union of Concerned Scientists, people that use science to address global problems, is that global warming leads to changes in weather patterns, affecting our crop harvests, and before you know it, negatively affecting our economy. So why should we shift to solar energy? Unlike nuclear and fossil fuel energy, solar energy doesn't produce carbon emissions or nuclear waste. I explored solar energy using Google's website called Project Sunroof. As you can see from the images, I took data from the EIA and from Project Sunroof, which shows how much energy your home produces and its long-term effects. The average home in Illinois uses 744 kilowatt hours a month, so we can apply that to Waukegan. A roof in Waukegan can produce 8,800 kilowatt hours a year, or 733 kilowatt hours a month, meaning that a residence in Waukegan can theoretically sustain itself on solar energy with only an 11 kilowatt hour deficit every month. These next images show the cost estimates for installing solar panels. I use my home as an example in Waukegan. Using Google Project Sunroof again, the calculated cost of installation is $23,871. However, with incentives, that reduces the price down to $18,000. Now, that does seem like a lot of money, but in retrospect, it's slightly less than what Americans pay for a used car in 2018, which is $20,000 according to Edmunds. With a little bit of financing, policy changes, and time, our residents can be making money from these solar panels. Unlike a car, which depreciates to $0 over 20 years, my home would save about $11,000 over 20 years if I invested in solar panels. However, there are other things to consider. Of course, the sun always doesn't shine. Theoretically, we can live 100% off of solar energy, but that doesn't mean we can do so in practice. We also have to take into consideration the batteries that we would have to buy. According to Energy Sage, solar batteries range from $5,000 to $7,000, not including installation. But even without batteries, and therefore some continued reliance on our existing energy sources, solar installations are still worth the benefits that they bring. As COVID has shown us, reducing CO2 emissions has revived nature on the Lake Michigan shoreline in 3 months. Imagine what 5 years of such reductions could do. Waukegan can be more than a suburban city. It can be the start of something great. Our city can set the example to improve the environment through the power we use. We've used nuclear and fossil fuel energy for a long time, but with time comes change. COVID surprised us because it was out of the ordinary, but it showed us what the world might look like if we burn less fossil fuel. One way to keep those benefits in solar power is through the energy that's been shining on us since the beginning.
Student loan debt reaches $1.6 trillion. That's an eye-catching headline, isn't it? Student loan debt in the United States has ballooned to astronomical amounts, and this has caused a great deal of undeniable stress for many families. And there are way too many harrowing stories. Take the story of Khalila Beecham Watkins. Khalila graduated with $49,000 of student debt in 2011, and yet, after 7 years of making payments, her total debt had nearly doubled to $80,000. Why? Because of the compound interest rate she had unknowingly accepted. Khalila recalls her experience of being a first-generation student and how her family wasn't financially literate when it came to loans. Oftentimes, loan companies use predatory practices specifically targeted at first-generation low-income students. Unfortunately, Khalila's story is far from unique. Almost 3/4 of America's graduating students leave college with an average of $30,000 in student debt. To make matters worse, many of these graduates can only find jobs that barely cover their loan payments, let alone pay for food and housing. Student loan debt is a crisis in America and will lead to even more crises if not addressed. Let's explore how this crisis is affecting not just students, but the entire nation, and then we will discuss some solutions. One of the main culprits causing the student loan debt crisis is the actual cost of college. For example, according to Time magazine, in 1940, the cost of a year at Dartmouth College was $1,700. I am very fortunate that I'll be attending Dartmouth next year, but in 2020, it will cost $81,000. That's more than my father's entire annual salary, and according to the United States Census Bureau, is 33% more than the median household income in the entire country. Fortunately, I was awarded a very, very generous scholarship, or else I wouldn't even be able to dream of attending. But it's pretty clear, college costs are out of control. To put this in perspective, according to US News World Report, the rate of inflation has risen 54% since 1999, but the average tuition and fees at private national universities have jumped 154%, while out-of-state tuition and fees at public national universities have risen 181%. The more and more we look into it, the more obvious it is how economically out of control and simply unsustainable the cost of college and student loans has become. Let's consider the effects this has on society as a whole. One side effect of the student loan debt crisis is the declining birth rate in the United States. Well, how could the birth rate possibly be connected to student loan debt? According to the Washington Post, the birth rate in the United States has reached an all-time low at 1.73 births per mother. In another article, the Post discusses the story of Saro and Lorna Sharian, a couple who together is under a combined total of $140,000 in student debt loans. Because of their loan payments, they are unable to afford a house, much less afford to have a baby. And tens of thousands of couples across the United States are forced to withhold having a child. Well, how does this affect the rest of us? With a slower growing population, there won't be enough workers to replace retirees, which will either require an increase in Social Security and Medicare taxes or a decrease in expenditures for both. And according to Deseret News, this would negatively impact all United States generations, from stalling economic growth to shortchanging these and other safety net programs that benefit the elderly. Another side effect of excessive student debt is in the area of affordable housing. College graduates are unable to pay for housing if they can't pay off college loans, especially with housing payments on the rise. This creates the issue of not buying into the housing market. With nobody buying starter homes, according to Investopedia, if people don't buy into the housing market at the entry level, then it could eventually crash, causing another potential economic recession. Lastly, I would like to bring in my personal perspective as a Waukegan high school student. If a student at our school doesn't get into a college with 100% need-based aid, they are often shut out of a four-year degree as first-generation low-income students. Whereas most Waukegan students are intellectually capable and academically prepared to attend a four-year institution, they can't afford it in comparison to more affluent students. According to College for America, only 54% of students from lower income schools entered college, but almost 70% of higher income students did. First generation low income students are forced to attend community college, or they head directly into the workforce without an adequate education. First generation students aren't knowledgeable about student loans and financial aid and are tricked into taking out too many loans. So, let's discuss some solutions. There are two extremes here. On the far left, you have erase all student loan debt for everyone and make college free. On the other end, you have the reasoning that waiving student loans would cause our economy to crash and is an unsustainable option. Well, what can we do? First, we need to come to a general consensus that a solution is necessary. Then, we need to organize legislators and lobby for a cause. Well, what do I personally propose? Here's a couple of solutions that I think would work. Waive student loan debt for families making less than $100,000 and waive student loan debt for everyone with a principal of over $100,000. In the past, we've had programs for veteran relief or working for nonprofits that would waive your student debt. Tragically, under the current administration, these programs are under attack. These programs encourage college graduates to invest in humanitarian efforts that not only waive their student loans, but create stronger social connections by getting people involved with people. By raising student loan debt, we would create a more equitable society, one meant for anyone and everyone to thrive in. Well, what can you do to help? Go out, advocate for loan relief policies by lobbying with lawmakers. Go out and vote, spread it on social media, and talk to family and friends on the topic. To all my fellow Gen Zers, I encourage you to go out and vote, especially this year, as we are one of the most important voting blocks. Advocate for what you believe in and make sure your voice is heard.
Recall the support that you received in high school to prepare for your future. Recall how you used the life skills and knowledge that you gained in high school to reach your short and long term goals. And in the end, you became your definition of successful. Once you do that, it's evident that the resources offered during high school were crucial to your growth and success. More specifically, the access to these resources. High school counselors are one critical resource in helping students succeed. When there is a lack of counselors, student potential decreases. Now you might be wondering, why does student potential decrease? Well, the American School Counselor Association, also known as the ASCA, compiled a report to provide 10-year trends of student-to-counselor ratios from 2004 to 5 to 2014 to 15 at public schools in the United States. The evidence shows that when school counselors are in an environment free of large student caseloads, the access to a school counselor can make a significant difference in students' persistence, retention, students' post-secondary aspirations, and students' likelihood of enrolling in a post-secondary education. They concluded that the ideal student-to-counselor ratio is 250 to 1, yet at Waukegan High School that is not the case. Waukegan High School is the 21st largest high school in the United States. At Waukegan High School there are 2 campuses, one for the upperclassmen and the other for the lowerclassmen, and the student-to-school counselor ratio is 288 to 1, while the student-to-college counselor ratio is 4,600 to 1. In comparison to Libertyville, a neighboring community has a student-to-college counselor ratio of 616 to 1. At Waukegan High School, school counselors are in charge of making the student schedule, changing them if necessary, among other things, while the college counselor resides at the upperclassmen campus. So students don't see the college counselor until junior year, and for some, junior year is too late to receive college counseling. Plus, young people in Waukegan who aspire to attend college need more support, as only 18% of Waukegan households have someone living with a college degree. Although the college counselor helps upperclassmen students find scholarships, fill out the FAFSA, and essentially assist them through the career decision process. Ultimately, one fundamental aspect of both types of these counselors is that they want to get to know their students. Yet that isn't possible because, again, at Waukegan High School, there's a student-to-school counselor ratio of 288 to 1 and student-to-college counselor ratio of 4,600 to 1. This is pervasive to low-income communities of color across the country. But I am focusing on Waukegan because of my connection with it and because the student population is massive and in great need. And by focusing on one community, we are more likely to achieve change. Waukegan District 60 handles budgeting improperly, which is negatively affecting our student-to-counselor ratio and in turn, student potential. The Chicago Tribune, a daily newspaper located in Chicago, uses their platform to share breaking news. Recently, on December 17th of 2019, the Chicago Tribune published an article titled, Waukegan District 60 Finalizes Purchase of Downtown Building to House Administrative Offices. They reported that the district spends $700,000 out of its education fund for the building, which a November appraisal valued at $1.175 million. This improper use of spending shows that Waukegan District 60 has the necessary funding in the budget to spare for another counselor. In a personal interview conducted on May 26th of 2020, I asked Anita Hanna, the current senior board member, for her position on the purchase of the building. She stated, I believe that the decision to purchase a $700,000 building for administration was irresponsible and not a very good use of our education funds. With the numerous issues we have in the school district, as not having enough counselors for our students should take priority over expediting money for a building without even a plan, or the additional money for renovations that range from $8 million to $13 million. So not only did Waukegan District 60 spend $700,000, but they don't even have a plan for the building, and there will be more spending involved for renovations. Not only that, but Waukegan District 60 also spent $486,000 to buy lights for the football field. Yes, it has been an asset that some have been waiting for, but a brighter future for our students should be more important than a brighter football field. We need to use the education funds for more pressing issues, because in the end, using funds for more counselors is for the good of our future generations. Making sure that each student receives adequate attention should be a top priority. I am a recent Waukegan High School graduate for the class of 2020. Waukegan High School has a system where you schedule meetings with your school counselor through an application. But throughout the school year, I found myself waiting in line during the time slot that I selected and theoretically had secured a spot for. while another student states, with reference to the college counselor, every time either me or my classmates were called down, he would either be with another student or had a line full of other students waiting. Essentially, I wasn't being respected and she wasn't either. And it all boils down to the fact that the student to counselor ratio is high and does not meet the ASAA guidelines. We need to act immediately to give future generations a chance to connect with their counselors. The solution? Hire at least 2 more school counselors and at the very least 1 more college counselor. As seen by the district spending on different facilities and installments, we have the money to hire new counselors, especially because by hiring more counselors, counselors will have fewer students to focus on, and that would help alleviate the pressure they have to handle so many students. With that being said, students will be able to once again schedule appointments without the fear of their spot being taken, receive guidance in any aspect, and in the end, students' potential will increase for success after high school. Now you might be wondering, what can I do to help? You don't have to live in Waukegan. Simply by using your voice, you can bring light to this issue. You can talk about the issue with people in your community and bring awareness, because awareness really does make a difference. You can get more involved with your community's parent-teacher association and school board meetings. You can create and sign petitions in order to amplify the issue. By coming together and vocalizing the counselor issue, we'll be able to create a better environment for our students and make sure they receive the adequate and necessary resources to succeed. Again, focusing on one community will increase the livelihood to yield change. We need to escape issues that plague our community, but none of it is possible if there isn't support in the school.
I would like to begin today by telling you all a story, one that illustrates the topic that I will be presenting: juvenile delinquency. This story takes place in a program called Teen Court, which provides youth offenders with alternative consequences to the juvenile system. They are able to leave with a clean record as long as they meet the consequence requirements. This story begins when a youth offender came through the program for battery. She was questioned by the court, and it was later revealed that she was failing one of her classes. This encouraged one of our volunteer jurors to offer and tutor her. And when the youth offender came back to the program to be released, she stated that her favorite part of going through teen court was that one of her peers wanted to do something nice for her, and they remained friends. This is only one of the many success stories where we witness positive change in the youth's course of behavior as a result of these programs that allow them to feel valued and included. Unfortunately, not all parents are able to give that to their children. Not all parents are able to give their children everything that they need to live a successful life, as I'm sure you all have for your children. So put yourself in these parents' shoes. Imagine if these were your children, your grandchildren even. We must act now as a community to transform the lives of youth that need it. Now let's take a closer look at juvenile delinquency, starting with the 10,000-foot view. The primary cause is the socioeconomic challenges that families face. This makes it very difficult for parents to be able to provide the time, the guidance, the knowledge, and a good role model to learn from, all while helping their children make good choices. According to the graphs provided by the Welfare Info website in 2018, Waukegan's poverty rate was about 18%, putting it 25% higher than the rest of Illinois. Now, this does not mean that families are still not struggling to make ends meet. This just means that they are not considered to be living below the poverty line because they are working 2, 3, or maybe even more jobs in order to provide for their dependents and survive. As a result, teenagers are left to fend for themselves, and they may not always have the resources to get them to programs that might benefit them. The socioeconomic challenges will only continue to rise as a result of this current COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, in a recent CNN article by Samir Rahim titled "Why Gen Z Will Be Hit Hardest by the Financial Fallout from Coronavirus," we can see exactly how youth will be impacted. The article discusses how unemployment in a recession will mostly affect those that have just finished school, and that's because there will be fewer jobs and fewer internships available. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the unemployment rate in April rose sharply among all major worker groups, but it was the highest in the group of teenagers ages 16 to 19 years old, at almost 32%. This means that the teenagers that are already struggling with these socioeconomic challenges will now be negatively affected twice as much as a result of the current pandemic. So again, we must act now. The absence of a consistent role model in often single-parent households allow youth to be influenced by peer pressure because they have no one in the home front to provide an alternative course of action. They turn to negative alternatives that only temporarily relieve them of their struggles. And this is due to the fact that they are either transitioning into or just beginning their teenage years, where they're easily misguided by their peers to make decisions that are not smart. The socioeconomic pressures, lack of a functioning family unit with good role models, and the influence of social media. These are all systemic issues that our society has failed to successfully address, and which are too big and too complex for me to tackle here. But there is another way. Simply put, working to prevent juvenile delinquency before it even begins. Sort of a stitch-in-time philosophy. As I stated in the beginning, both you and I are here because of Waukegan to College. I have been part of the program for about 5 years now and have benefited greatly from its resources and support. As a first-generation student, my family had no idea how to even begin to guide me through this new chapter in my life, college. In a conversation with Elise Dinkers, the executive director of the program, she stated that the program's college graduation rate is 77%, which is significantly higher than the 11% national average for first-generation, low-income students of color. The strength of this statistic speaks for itself. This program accomplishes these things through its resources such as tutoring, volunteer opportunities, and more, but especially through their mentorship program. For example, a few months ago, I was paired with a mentor that has college experience and is able to guide me in ways that my family could not. As I was researching the issue of juvenile delinquency, my initial thought was to come up with a program that would address the issue, not realizing that the perfect program was already in place. Waukegan to College, an award-winning local program that also enjoys national recognition. So please, hear me out. Mentorship. The heart and soul of what Waukegan to College does and does well has proven to be transformative. In fact, mentorship is something that is encouraged throughout our society. At its highest level, corporate executives pay mentors known as performance or career coaches to help build on already successful careers. So the real issue here is not the program itself, but how to ensure that it reaches all at-risk youth. While not everyone chooses to go to college, many of the county's at-risk teens would benefit from a mentor that says, "I believe in you." And here are the possibilities as opposed to the daily subtle messages that diminish a teenager's sense of self-worth. It is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to have a program of this quality that even some people within the city of Waukegan and Lake County are unaware of or not utilizing. So let's get the word out. This starts with my challenge to you. Tell 3 people what you know about Waukegan to College and ask them to consider becoming mentors. Do you have a parent living independently in senior housing whose activity director might welcome the opportunity to match an active, interested senior with a teenager at risk? Or better yet, are you part of a local organization that has charitable funds available and would be encouraged to contribute to Waukegan to College or similar organizations? Let's come together as a community to help first generation low-income students achieve a brighter future.
Imagine you're 4 years old. You're in the part of Guatemala, you just finished playing tag with your friend from the road for the last time, which you never see again after the last day of Guatemala. You find yourself on a boat, staring at miles and miles at the bluest water you've ever seen, and a plane wondering, why is there a cloud next to me? And the boy's starving, asking the person next to you, excuse me, but where are we going? Just wanted to say a word you don't know yet, Chicago. But being the 4-year-old that you are, quickly start to adapt to the world around you. You learn that you love cheeseburgers, Popeyes, basketball, Chicago Cubs and Bulls, and that Forrest Gump is one of your favorite movies of all time. You start to call the United States your home. You learn about the American Revolution, the Constitution, the Civil War, the bombing in Pearl Harbor, 9/11, and the war in Iraq. You grieve when everyone in America does, like during the Boston Marathon bombings and the Sandy Hook shooting. You grow up similarly to other kids around you, but when you're older, you find out that you have one big secret. You find out that your safety is assured, that everything you learn, like the rights to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, don't apply to you. This is my story. But it's also similar to the stories of 700 other people that live in the United States who are undocumented. By 2012, everything changed. The Deferred Action for Child Arrivals DACA program was created then and allowed 30 young people who came to US as children to apply for authorization and protection for deportation. These kids that applied for the DACA program handed over their personal information to the government, came to the US before the 16th birthday, before June 15, 2007, are enrolled in school, graduated from high school, obtained a GED certificate, or received an out of discharge from the military, have no conviction of a felony, significant misdemeanor, or 3 or more other misdemeanors, and don't pose a threat to national security or public safety. Currently, there are 700,000 who applied and hold DACA, but there are 1.3 million who are DACA eligible. People like me, dreamers, need a path to citizenship. This path to citizenship needs to be a law passed by Congress to protect those who are most vulnerable in the United States. You're probably asking right now, why should the United States Congress pass a law giving DACA recipients legal path to citizenship? The United States has invested so much in education, it should maximize their dividends. This is usually the example. According to Illinois report card, the cost per student in Waukegan's district is $13,471 per school year. I spent 13 years in school, so that means $106,403 hazardous medication, and that's not including college or healthcare costs. In reality, we will always have young immigrants in our schools, using our healthcare system, and being part of the economy. But if the law prevents these immigrant kids from opening a bank account or getting a driver's license, how are they supposed to fully participate in the economy and social structure of the United States? That would mean Illinois will lose talented, well-educated people from its workforce, reduce taxes to the states, and law-abiding social contributions to the betterment of society. At the same time, the United States will have to spend a significant amount of funds to find these immigrants here and deport them. Does the United States really want to send dreamers from their country so they can take all the skills they have obtained here and then value in another community? That would be a total significant net loss for the United States. We have to change the career system here to keep these talented DACA kids in the US and not allow other countries to benefit from American investment in them. But we keep the system in place. Are we willing to stand up today and change it before it's too late? So how much would the United States really be giving up if we deport DACA recipients? Not only have we invested so much in dreamers already, but the 700,000 who are able to control DACA have contributed so much already to the United States. According to FWD US, DACA recipients contribute $42 billion to our GDP, nearly $2 billion to Social Security annually, nearly $470 million to American annually. Also, the US could lose up to $93 billion in federal tax within the next decade. The permanent protection for DACA recipients is assured. Up to $1 trillion could be added to US GDP over the decade. And permanent protection for DACA recipients is assured. These numbers are so large it's difficult to wrap your brain around them. But the entire Illinois state budget, just approved by the General Assembly, was $40 billion. That's all for Illinois. That means DACA recipients can contribute more than the entire budget of Illinois. What a tremendous loss to the economy of the US at a time where every dollar counts. Dreamers are valued in this country. They have deeply integrated themselves in nearly every community college in the United States. Hurting dreamers hurts everyone and everything. Why has DACA not become a law? DACA was passed as executive order by Barack Obama back in 2012. We know executive orders can be overturned by the next president. That's what the current president, Donald Trump, has been trying to do since he was elected president. The Donald Trump president, he has supported DACA sometimes. During an ABC News interview in 2007, Donald Trump said, "They are here illegally. Shouldn't be very worried. I do have a big heart. We're going to take care of everybody. We're going to have a very strong border. We have great people that are here, have done a good job. They should be far less worried." Trump says he has a big heart and the DIAZ should be less than worried, but it makes you wonder how big his heart really is. Because according to Politico, Trump tried to DACA in 2007, but he was ordered by two federal courts to wait till the Supreme Court, waiting on the legality of the executive order to resign DACA. Now the Supreme Court appears to let Trump end DACA with no alternative for Dreamers. While a permanent legislative solution, potentially hundreds of thousands of young people could be taken away from loved ones, communities, jobs, with serious consequences to their lives and the U.S. economy. Now it's up to us, DACA supporters and activists, to lobby current people in Congress and get to pass protective legislation to protect DACA recipients. You cannot forget the fact that Dreamers are humans as well, who have surrendered their lives in the U.S. since they were very young. They are contributing members of society who soon will face the emotional burden of not knowing what their future will look like. That is why we need a congressional law that addresses the problem now. A law that states individuals who enter the United States before the 16th birthday, have been in an institution of higher education or technical education school, have graduated high school or obtained a GED, or is currently enrolled in secondary school, have not been convicted of any crime punishable more than 1 year in prison, or 3 or more other offenses under state or federal law, will be granted conditional permanent residency that will last for 10 years. This conditional permanent residency will protect them from deportation and grant them the right to work. Individuals with conditional permanent residency will be able to become lawful permanent residents if they have completed at least 2 years in good standing, higher education, or a program leading to certificate recognition from an early career in technical education school, or have completed at least 2 years of military service with an honorable discharge, or can prove that they have worked 75% of the time over a 3-year period. We cannot let Trump end DACA without a plan for Dreamers. This June, the Supreme Court was not allowed. Dreamers must be protected and continue to contribute to the United States. DACA is a resolution. What must be done is Congress must pass legislation that heads towards similar elections to the one I have proposed. Legislation that will become a permanent solution for Dreamers. Legislation that will provide the path citizenship for undocumented immigrants who enter the country as minors. Dreamers aren't these foreign people from a place far, far away. Dreamers are American in every way possible, except on paper. If we share a similar past, we must be able to share a similar future.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm NYAH, a graduated senior at Waukegan High School. I live in a low-income, minority-majority community. My high school is full of first-generation students, and we all know that being the first of anything can be really scary. Whether it's going into a field of study that your family disapproves of, learning a new sport, taking accelerated classes, or even just trying to find the nearest bathroom, we all know that we need the help of others to succeed. As a mentee my freshman year, I was the last generation to experience my school's mentorship program. I can still remember the seniors coming into our classes, having activities to do with us, letting us ask them questions, get advice, and even make new friends. Having an older peer to look up to and trust was really helpful to me, as there were things that I just could not talk to the adults about. With that being said, simply having a mentor as another support system was really beneficial. Unfortunately, the mentorship program was discontinued just after that year. Instead, the grade levels were split up into 2 campuses. Brookside, formerly known as East Campus, is for underclassmen, freshmen, and sophomores, while Washington, or East Campus, is for upperclassmen, juniors, and seniors. With this separation, the upperclassmen are able to thrive in a calm environment and focus on their future. Meanwhile, without guidance, the underclassmen cannot do the same. Although they do not have that direct guidance, students can still be involved in extracurricular activities, thus exposing themselves to upperclassmen in another way. With different activities ranging from student government to sports to the music department and other clubs and organizations, I asked some students from Waukegan High School to answer this sentence. One thing I learned from an upperclassman would be, Maria, a sophomore, says, to not be scared to join things and to socialize with more people. Layla, a freshman, says, to try your hardest and make the best of high school while you can, because it goes by way faster than you'd think. And to not worry about the negative and drama going on now because it won't matter later on. Beatrice, a junior, says, you will be able to achieve your goals with persistence and dedication. Leo, a sophomore, says, to enjoy your high school years because you're running out. Daniel, a junior, says, stick true to yourself and only surround yourself with those encouraging you through all your adventures. Don't let anyone stand in the way of your dreams. Natalie, a sophomore, says, to never give up and continue trying. Gabby, also a sophomore, says, I learned how to socialize better with different kinds of people. Chris, a junior, says, to stay organized, focused, and be yourself. And, last but not least, and my personal favorite, Nagaya, a junior, says, to be kind to everyone because you never know what impact one nice word can do to someone. Identity-based motivation theory, also known as the IBM theory, is the idea that we have an identity in mind that gives us motivation, similar to having a role model that we trust and admire. For example, within mentorship programs, let's say that there's a sophomore who did not do well their freshman year, and there's a lot of emphasis and pressure surrounding freshman year of people saying that you need to have a good start in your high school career to maintain a good GPA, to get into college, all that good stuff. So with that in mind, this now sophomore, seeing as how they did not do well freshman year, are questioning whether or not they can even get into college anymore, whether or not they should continue trying their best. Now, luckily, there's a senior mentor who has coincidentally gone through the exact same thing. Their freshman grades were not the best either, but they were also involved in college readiness programs, and they were able to determine that colleges prefer to see progression. So, with that freshman year being so rocky, if the student were to monumentally improve by senior year, then they would definitely have a great chance of getting into college. After the senior mentor realizes the connection that they both have, the senior mentor is able to then tell the sophomore about their experiences and how they are still able to succeed and go to college. And now, that sophomore who was questioning themselves now sees that there is someone who is coming from the same background as them and still succeeding. Then that sophomore can put the mentor's identity in their mind and say, hey, if we can succeed, then maybe I can too. Freshman year, I did not know how to play badminton. I was in awe watching the varsity team with their fast backhands and their intense smashes. Eventually, after practice one day, I asked the senior just how they did those intense smashes because mine were all slow and weak and it was not good. But the upperclassman was able to take the time out of their day to show me that it was all in the snap of the wrist. And after that day, I was able to get better and improve my game, and I ended up being the only sophomore on the varsity team the following year. And that was a huge accomplishment for me that I could not have done without that advice. Guidance is a critical key to success. At new jobs, there will always be someone to show you around, who to talk to if you need help, and even how to work the copying machine. I'm sure you can remember a time in college when you needed help too, whether it was choosing classes, needing help with writing a paper, or even trying to find the next party to go to. No matter where you are in life, everyone benefits from learning something from someone who has already done it. So, after reminding you of the importance of mentorship, there's only one question left. What can you do to help? Within your own communities, you can easily advocate for mentorship programs by contacting your district's school board. Promoting just how beneficial the programs are to the communities is extremely important, and the awareness that you bring is bound to give you results. The youth is our future. Why not invest in them?
I recently read a really disturbing article that was published on the New York Times on August 18, 2019. It described the story of a 16-year-old named Luvia Sassoon Perez. Luvia was born in Jalapa, Guatemala, and lived with her sisters and her parents in a very small home. She fell in love with a 17-year-old male named Giovanni Ramirez, and she became pregnant with his baby. She then discovered that he had various fits of rages, and she endured many of his abusive episodes. So within 5 months of her being pregnant, she she decided to leave him in fear of his rage and in fear of losing her baby due to the abuse. On August 18, 2019, Giovanni, after drinking with his brother and another accomplice, made their way to Lubia's house and started striking her house with a machete. Lubia and her mother ran out, begging him to stop, and without hesitation, Giovanni struck her mother on the head and killed her. Along came her father after multiple screams, and Giovanni ended up leaving both her parents on the floor wounded. After this traumatic and horrific incident, Giovanni was only sentenced 4 years of prison, and it is still possible he will be able to see his son after he's released. And Lubia will be forced to interact with the person who murdered her parents before her eyes. As severe as this woman's story sounds, it's very far from being unique. According to the New York Times and the United Nations, 1 out of every 3 women in Latin America experience sexual or physical abuse. According to the United Nations, but 98% of gender-related killings are not prosecuted. Violence against women in Latin America is something that isn't really talked about much in the United States, and leaving so many people uninformed of what's going on in the world around them, leaving these women in great danger because they're fighting for themselves and with themselves with no type of support. Throughout this speech, I will be talking about what are the causes of violence against women in Latin America, how it affects them and future generations of Latino Hispanic families. And finally, I will be proposing solutions that will help reduce the amount of women being affected by this and hopefully help this come to an end. To begin with, one of the most essential causes on why violence against women in Latin America is a really big thing in our lives, it's because the mentality of how it should be is reinforced and inclined in young males and females. The Hispanic culture teaches us that males are supposed to be the breadwinners, do the physical jobs, do all the masculine jobs. Meanwhile, women are supposed to stay home and do the non-physical household duties, such as cooking, cleaning, laundry, and taking care of children. This is where machismo is inclined, and it is lived thoroughly and taught through generations of Latino Hispanic families. It is fair to say that Giovanni was probably living in a household where machismo was inclined, which made him believe that males were more dominant and powerful than women. In addition, another essential cause on why violence against women in Latin America is a very big thing is because women do not have voices in their Hispanic countries. It is not uncommon for officers and the government to just refuse to get involved in situations like these. According to the New York Times regarding women in Ecatepec, Mexico, women say police officers do not protect them and are sometimes even the attackers. Women are afraid to speak up, and when they speak up, they get ignored. The people they should be able to confide on and trust on regarding these situations abuse them and even ignore them. In spite of what has already been happening regarding Trump's rules about refugees crossing the border and his increase of border patrol and all the borders closing within countries and states, and the pandemic and the social distancing, as well as the stay-at-home rules, if a woman wanted to leave and start a new life in the United States and leave all the abuse behind, she couldn't because of everything that she just can't. She has to stay home. Now that we understand some of the contributing factors of that lead to violence against women, let's talk about the effects it has on our lives. From the cultural norms we previously discussed, we know that these norms are taught at a very young age to males and females. So when they begin dating and they start experiencing a type of abuse and the pushing around, they'll think it's normal because they were taught at a very young age that males are more dominant and women are supposed to be weaker. We know it's not a healthy relationship, but they'll think it is. And this education is just going to keep going on through generation. Women are forced to live as though they're walking on eggshells. They are in fear every day because they do not have the same privileges men do. They are in fear because they think that a man and an officer will treat them as if they're property. Women go on with their lives thinking, I can't fall asleep on this bus. That's a man's privilege, says Amelia from the New York Times. Due to the pandemic and all the stay-at-home rules, domestic hotlines have risen up in Mexico up to 60%, and in Colombia they have risen up to 90%. Those are really big numbers. I understand that some of us do not live in Latin America or have anything to do with it whatsoever, but I believe it's important for us to educate about the world around us and all these third world countries, because they're dealing with problems too, and we never know when someone who is in situations like these that will approach us and ask us for emergency help. In spite of the causes and the effects of violence against women in Latin America, I will now be proceeding with a technological and a cultural solution. The world we live in now has technological advances in every aspect. We see them in the medical field, our working environment, and even our educational lives. A good example on where these advances are being used are in the creation of apps that help women if she's in trouble and needs a call for help. Some of these apps are called Juntas, ELLAS app, Mujer Alerta, Sophie app, etc. Some of these countries do not use apps, but they use props such as panic bracelets, which are essentially the same thing, but instead of shaking your phone to send a signal, you just tap it and your signal is sent. This generation is full of people with a variety of different opinions, and they will refuse to let themselves not be heard. So I propose that we should start teaching our children and start educating ourselves about these sort of problems, teaching them the rights of wrongs about consent, domestic abuse, racial discrimination, etc., and show them to stand up for these opinions. Because it's something that our ancestors couldn't do because of punishments and consequences. So I think it's a very good timing to take advantage of it. In conclusion, the violence against women in Latin America is something that isn't spoken about much in America because it's overshadowed by the amount of different situations going on, which is wrong because these women are still living in great danger and are fighting with themselves, for themselves, with no type of support. Today I talked about what are the causes of violence against women in Latin America. I talked about how it affects not only them but future generations of Latino Hispanic families, and I also spoke about proposing solutions for women and girls so they can go without having to be paranoid and cautious with whom they are with all the time. Going back to Luvia's story, she did not get the justice she deserved because she's still living in the house her mother got assassinated in, and these are the kind of situations we're trying to stop from happening. We can't make a change unless we start taking action now. Even simply talking with friends and family about what you learned today can help move the needle in a direction of progress. We can't make changes if we don't start taking action now.